Saaghe Fogwe podcast. Elevate your life, empowering insights for growth, success, and fulfillment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Saaghe Fogwe podcast. Today will be a very special session. It's super special, and you'll know in a minute why it is. We invite you here today to empower yourself, uplift yourself, and we want to support success, growth, and fulfillment. That will be our tagline going forward for the Saaghe Fogwe podcast. So whatever you get out of this should lead you towards those items. The reason why today is very special is because I have someone here whom I've known for all my life, 47 years and counting. This person has been a role model to me and still is and always will be. He was one of my first teachers. He raised me. He directed me. He made me the person I am today, alongside, his very precious wife, who's not in the studio today, but always is behind him. Every successful man has a strong woman behind him. So I won't take all the time to introduce him because we'll get to know who he is today. But the reason this is special is because I have my dad, whom I call Papa. He's here today. So welcome, Reverend Dr. Joseph Aji-Mvo to the studio. Welcome, Papa.
Thank you, Saaghe.
So explain Saaghe, because everybody has problems with that name. Before we go into you, what is Saaghe? Where did that come from?
We tend to give names to our children that reflect the event of birth or relationship. And Saaghe means with us, because Saaghe was born on Christmas Day, and we were married on Christmas Day. Incidentally, we were married on Thursday, Christmas Day, Thursday, December 25. Saaghe was born on Thursday, December 25. And so we decided to name Saaghe with us. That is, when we celebrate your birthday, we are celebrating it with Jesus and with us, your parents, because of our marriage on the same day. That's
Amen.
what Saaghe means with
Amen.
us.
So now you guys have it. So, we put that to rest because I keep getting the question, where did that name come from? So I know who you are. I've lived with you. I know who you are. But a lot of our viewers today, we have a diverse audience and viewers. Tell people briefly who you are. Who is Reverend Dr. Joseph Aji-Mvo?
Joseph Aji-Mvo can briefly be described in an acronym NEWS. NEWS of Aji-Mvo. NEWS stands for Nativity and Nurture. I was born in Agam, Womb, in Menchum division of Northwest Cameroon. I was nurtured by my parents, who were called peasants. Then my auntie, who was a church elder, and then one headmaster who was my master, with whom I lived, and he became my godfather. My auntie became godmother, and many others. All the teachers I've passed through, and friends, and most of it, my peers, helped me to grow. And exposure. I attended the then Bassa Mission School in Southern Cameroon, and then I went to CPC Bali and spent 1 year there because I couldn't afford the school fees. I had to leave, but I passed from Standard 5 in our days, and then I went back now from CPC. I went back to complete Standard 6 to get the West African First School Living Certificate. After that, I was posted to start teaching in a school at the age of 14. And then I also became church elder, church secretary at that age. And then later on, I went to Government Technical College, Ombe. And then from Ombe, I went to the Presbyterian Theological College in Nyasuso. From Nyasuso, I attended West Hill College of Education 20 as a youth teacher, and then went on to the University of Birmingham, and did the studies there, and the West African Center, and the Faculty of Education, and the same university. Well, later on, many years passed, and I went to University of Edinburgh to do theology and development studies. And then they went back, and since then I've been working. My exposure has taken me to many different countries as an ecumenical student, and attending ecumenical conferences, and first World Council of Churches conference here in the United States in 1979. Then later on, attended courses in Bosse, and then attended the AACC. I worked with the AACC for some time, for 7 years, and many other ecumenical events that have been exposed to. Talking about now that's work and worship. I have worked, as I said, I started teaching at the age of 14. Then when I left Ombe, I worked in the public works department, and then I went to the seminary. And then after seminary, I have worked in Boya and the various places in Cameroon, serving in the different departments. I mean, I've served in I've been up to 4 different departments, combined with congregational work. And then concerning worship has been my pastime, and I've been keen on the liturgy, and I've been keen on organizing services. And so that is what makes up my spirituality. And so S stands for sociability, which is I belong to different associations. Right from childhood, I belong to the teenage groups that I belong to. I mean, my first actually communal movement was I was secretary, president actually at that time, president of the Reader and Digest, and then later on, I became a member of different associations. I don't know if I start naming them now.
We'll be here all day.
So my spirituality had been built up by associating myself with the church, growing up in the church, and associating myself with different organizations, non-governmental organizations, associating myself with cultural groups, development groups, and making up a person who should be, I could say,
know that you wanted to be a pastor?
First, I grew up, as I said, as a lay preacher in the congregations. As soon as when I was baptized, I immediately got engaged. Before even I was baptized, people did not even know that I came from a pre-Christian family. My parents were not yet Christians. My mother was baptized after me. I mean, they didn't know I was a Christian, but I was behaving. Everybody thought I was a Christian. But we had some dogmatic pastors who said they could not baptize a child whose parents were not in church, which is still a practice up to today, that before a child is baptized, at least one of the parents should be a member of the congregation where the baptism is taking place. And so the pastor kept to that principle. And even though my aunt said, this boy is growing up with me, they wouldn't baptize me until I came of age. And then I could confess myself. And so as soon as I was baptized, I mean, I went straight into joining the CYF, and then And later on, when I was before I went to Ombe, I was already a teacher, teaching in the school. And then as I went to Ombe, the students used to go and worship in Motengene. And then, since I had the ability to organize service, we asked the pastor for permission so that we could organize services in the college instead of students going there and loitering. And if they went late, they would not even be able to enter the church, and they will loiter around. Then the pastor permitted us. So for all my years in Ombe, I served like a voluntary church worker. And during that time, I was receiving questions from my colleagues. And one of the key questions was the question of evolution and creation. And so when they asked the question, the Bible talks about creation, and yet our science teachers told us that the world evolved, and we couldn't reconcile that. So that was one question. The other question was, when people were recited verses from Isaiah about Jesus, and the Isaiah lived 400 years before Jesus was born. Then question was, how could Isaiah know about Jesus coming on? How will you explain that Isaiah was speaking about Jesus? That was one question. Then there were many others which came up. And so I said, okay, in addition to my technical studies, I will go to the seminary, study theology, and come back to the industry and be able to answer the questions of my colleagues. So the calling to go to the pastor, the push came from Ombe. In the first place, was also because whenever we had an event in the college, we a group of us who were studying together and being leaders of the CYF, we decided to have a devotion. When the principal came, the first time the principal came, he thought we were delaying. So we stopped. We told the principal to wait. And then I stood up and then I read a Bible passage. And then first I called one person to sing a song. Then I read a Bible passage. And then I called another person to pray. And then we sat down. The event went on. From that day, the principal, no matter what happened, he will first come and wait. And we will do this short devotion before any event took place in the Government Technical College, Ombe.
Oh, wow.
And so from there, I said I needed to improve on this output. And then some of my teachers started calling me names. Some said Bishop Ambrose. Some say Pope. Some say St. Paul. Because most times I read from the epistles of Paul. So with all this, I thought I needed to improve, to go. I didn't want to be a pastor per se, but I wanted to study theology so that I could answer questions that were coming from science students and technological students. So that's what pushed me to go to the seminary.
Well, I think we can stop and share the link right now because we want people to join. If you're just joining us, feel free to share the link. Share the link. Let me grab it real quick. Just give us a second here to share. Okay. Yeah, so to think that everything that he just told us about, how he started off, and then we're the reason for this segment today is we're celebrating 50 years later. So he went to do research, he went to gather knowledge, and he's been there for 50 years. So we're celebrating this man. It's amazing. So we'll learn more in a little bit here. Let me just share a couple more people and then we should be good to go. Okay, one more and then, yeah. All right, so the theme that you have come up with for this celebration that so the actual date of his ordination is July 29th. It happened in 1973.
Yes.
So we're celebrating 50 years of being an ordained reverend.
Yes.
The theme you came up with is very interesting. So we need break it down for the layperson. The theme he came up with is 50 years of reverence and reference. What is that all about?
Yes. A lot of Christians think that the title Reverend given to ordained pastors is like something that is more of the pastor, and it's like an honor. But theologically, the title Reverend is given to somebody who reveres God. That's someone who worships God in a disciplined way and organizes worship for others in order that they can honor God. So the title Reverend Aji-Mvo, for example, comes to say this is Aji-Mvo organizes, reveres God. Now, reference for me is if you are not the key person. It's like a gate person. When someone comes to the gate, you open the gate, and then they will ask you, is your master in, your patron in, or whatever title they may use? Then you will say yes. Then they said, I would like to see them. Then you will then take the person and bring to the master. Now, for me, this title came because I studied the character of Philip, the apostle. And Philip is a very typical scholar who joined the team of Jesus as one who was inquisitive and who was also willing to expose others to Jesus. So the incident that impressed me very much was Philip. At one time, Jesus and the disciples were in Bethany, and while they were there, some Greeks came to see Jesus. But as it is, like in our tradition, they will always look for a country person. And so Philip had a name, a Greek name, and these people were Greeks. So they looked for Philip, and then they went to Philip and told Philip they want to see Jesus. Now it is then that Philip went to Andrew and then other disciples and told them this. And then Philip was now able to bring the Greeks to Jesus. So Philip referred Jesus to the Greeks. While until that time, Philip had been revering Jesus just as a disciple. So in my case, I said, as a Christian, I have been worshiping the Jesus. Then by the time I came on to be ordained, I was ordained and given the title Reverend. And since that title doesn't belong to me, that title was given to me so that I can continue to refer Jesus to other people. But so that's how it came about. That's why I came up with this theme, which is it comes from the epistle of John. I mean, the Gospel of John about Philip the apostle. But as it is, the system in the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon is that in our time, now it has changed. In our time, the moment you were admitted into the seminary, the day you entered the seminary, you were already taken as a church worker. So I was admitted into the seminary
even as a student.
Yes, as a student. As a student, you're already taken as a church worker, and you're placed on an allowance. So the moment I was admitted, I became a church worker, although I was already a church worker as a teacher. But this time I was regarded as the clergy in understudy, I mean, from 1968, September 68. And so I studied in the seminary for 4 years. And then after 4 years, we did 1 year of practicals. And that 1 year, the presbytery where you worked will recommend you for ordination as a formality. So for the first 5 years, therefore, the first 5 years are taken as years of training, years of preparation for ordination. So ordination proper is when the congregation gathers and the moderator and the synod clerk and the committee of the secretary committee of ministry and other pastors lay hands on you and then say a prayer for you. The congregation join and to support you. And from that moment, you are declared as a pastor, ordained into the ministry of the word and sacraments. And that's from that day, you start bearing the title Reverend. And so this title, Reverence and Reference, I came up with it from the story of Philip. And I thought it should be able to captivate people's interest to know that I am not the center of the celebration, it's Jesus. So I revere Jesus and I refer Jesus to other people. My work as an ordained minister has been all the time to refer Jesus to people. But I needed to be prepared for this, and I need to prepare myself for it.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, to live with someone for this long, you guys don't even understand how I'm feeling right now. To live with someone this long, and there are some stories that I'm hearing for the first time, first of all, that I hadn't heard before. I'm having goosebumps right now because to sit here and I'm interviewing my dad, it's a big deal. It's really a big deal for me, and I feel so honored to be able to do this today. So if you're still joining us, keep sharing the link so more people can watch this. This celebration will be ongoing, and you've always been that person who believes in our home being an international home, and there's no doubt why, you know, you have the personality you have, and also the way we're celebrating you this time is internationally. We're doing, you know, people are celebrating you all over in Cameroon, Europe, wherever they are, they're celebrating you. Speak to people about that kind of living, because I remember you telling us that our home was not our home. You have to be ready to wake up, make up a bed, cook a meal at any time if somebody shows up. Speak to people about that, because I know that that has been part of your journey for the 50 years. Your mindset has not changed from that. It's always been about that.
Yes, you're right about that. When it comes to talking about the home, I go back to my matrilineal background. I come from a society which other ethnicities look down on because they succeed by the woman. Matrilineal means that it is the woman who decides who will succeed predecessor. And so in Agam, we are the Agam people are matrilineal. So a child born of a woman belongs to the mother more and the father's next. And in the matrilineal home, the woman is called the owner of the house, and the man is called the owner of the compound. And so, and the owner of the house has complete control over her economy. She has her corn, she has her granules, she has her vegetable, and she can prepare her food. When she prepares food, she shares her husband's own with his friends and shares the children, and always make sure that my mother always made sure that we did not consume everything because someone may drop in who is coming from far and need something to eat.
Yes.
So I grew up in that surrounding that every time we had food, we never emptied the pot. We always made sure there was something left over for any guest who would drop in. That's the first thing. The second thing is when I was a teacher, the person who is now my wife was a student, a student. You know, and I was living in a house, in a teacher's house in the school compound, and she was living with her brother who was the headmaster, and I had some boys who were living with me and helping me, and then she was the one cooking for her brother. And so and she didn't want to have any links with me anyway, because she didn't want to have anything to do with men. But then whenever I was out, sometime when I come back, I'll meet her with the boys, helping the boys and telling them what to do to prepare my food. And so I noticed that, even though I did not expose it to her, so I noticed that she was helping the boys to prepare my food. And from that time, I started, I put an eye on her. It didn't occur to me that we'll marry, but I just wanted to have someone who would be able to take care of food. I myself, at the time, I was also I had also been a houseboy, and I had learned to cook. So I could also cook.
But I didn't know you could cook.
Yeah, I could cook. I mean, so it's actually after the marriage that your mother discouraged me, because she feared that if I continue to enter the kitchen, I may start criticizing her food. That's why I stayed off of the kitchen. so I could. So from that angle, I took note of her. Now it happened that July is a very special month for me, because on the 1st of July, we had graduated from Ombe. and we're in Victoria, where we inaugurated the youth center, which I have participated in building the slab that bears the name, the name or the foundation stone. Then on the 6th of July, I went to the beach just to take a walk. And there I had a meditation. And that meditation, I was thinking about my future, thinking about a job, thinking about how it will end up. And then with that question of going to the seminary in my head, I was thinking, and I did not want to have a permanent job, because I said, if I have a permanent job, maybe by the time they come to come for a seminary, I'll be attracted to the job. So I did want the permanent job. But although I ended up being employed by the PWD and sent to Bamenda, but that was that day I was thinking. So in a trance, I'll call it a trance. Some would say a vision. God revealed to me two things. First, that I was going to go to the seminary, and secondly, that the girl I admired was going to be my wife. And so after that, I wrote a letter to her. She was in Seka Baptist College, Victoria. I wrote a letter to her. I said, it has occurred to me that we shall be husband and wife. And I didn't give her a chance to say yes or no. I left it like that. Then she stayed for some time and then came back to me and said, what did you write? I said, what you read. And that it was that. And so that is how we came to be married. And since we got married, her cooking skills have enticed me and built me up. And so from that angle, she too got the idea of also being partly Agam and partly way. She too get the idea that you do not eat and empty the pot. And so that's why we have grown up. And you, some of you, I mean, those of you who have our children, you have noticed that we have never lived in the house with less than 7 people. Even if we had 2 children, there were 3, 4 others who came from other places living with us. And so in that way, we always have guests. And so for me, the home was established by God when God created man and woman. God created them male and female and made them to found a family. And then the family is made up of strangers. The family is not unique. We are not born husband and wife. We are born as 2 different individuals. It's only when we come together that we make our family. And so we need to learn to know that when we come as strangers, we can turn ourselves into a family.
Yes.
And so it doesn't matter where you come from, you can easily be built into the family. You don't need to be born in the family. So even though African culture and most other cultures use blood relations to describe the family, I don't limit it. I don't limit the family to blood relations. That's why I talk of sociability. That if there is anything that can bring people together socially, it can be. So even if you adopt a child, even if you have a child from a neighbor, if you have a child from Nigeria and you are in Cameroon, that child, you can build a person to become part of your family. So that's how I said the family is international. It's the same as the church. The church is not, there's nobody who owns the church. We all come and become members of the church, and then we all own the church. So nobody owns the church. Even those who run private churches cannot claim to be owners of the church. There are instruments God is using to gather people who should revere God. And so they are reference to, they refer Jesus to the people. So that's how, for me, the home, the church, and the community are international, intercultural, interdenominational. You can use all the inters.
Yes.
And you establish the fact that we are strangers who become members.
Wow. You guys got it. See what we had to grow up with. But the truth of the matter is, growing up, I couldn't even sit like this to have this conversation. I was so afraid of my dad that he'll meet me at the dining room table, and I'll take my plate and go and finish eating in the in the kitchen. I couldn't sit like this to have this conversation. So to see my kids, to see other grandkids in the family who can sit with him and ask him questions, it's a blessing. It's really, really, really a blessing to have this session, to sit here and he's still talking, the strong voice, he's still, his mind is still here. He can remember all these stories. And I knew that at some point we'll have to go to the marriage story. So he kind of already took us there. So because again, he could not be who he is without my mom, who, she's not here, but she's watching. She's definitely watching. And, we the kids, he has 4 girls and a boy, like the immediate kids. But of course, like he told you, blood doesn't mean the number of kids that you have. He has multiple out there. So we grew up with mom being the stronghold. We are who we are today because she was the strict parent. He came and went. He was more out there doing God's work. And, so, sometimes he even had to find out some of the stories, from 2 months later, something that had happened 2 months later, and he's trying to find out. But initially we didn't understand that you were out there. It was, we missed our dad. There are times when in boarding school, I would only hear that my dad came. Didn't see him. Food that he was supposed to bring for me. Any house that he spent a night in, he would drop the food there, or sour soup from Kumba. He would drop it off in somebody's house. I only hear about it. And then my mom would say, "Did you get your sour soup?" No. Wherever he slept, the food stays there. So those are just a few stories, about the person he is. But that has been your life. And we appreciate you. If we don't say it enough, we do appreciate the work you've done. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who appreciate what you've done.
Yes, actually talking about that, I know that you complained about my absenteeism, but I believe, and unfortunately for me, it's Jesus again I learned from. You remember when the parents went to Jerusalem with Jesus, and then Jesus stayed back in the temple while they were left. And then on the way, they discovered they had left their son behind. So they came back to look for him. And then he asked them a question: "Why were you worried about me? Did you not know that I had to be in my father's house?" Now, that question influenced my youth to know that, I didn't have to depend on myself to take care of my own people, because it is in caring for other people that I receive help from my own. And that principle guided me so strongly that if I had a call outside to attend to someone, I will go and attend to that person, because I believe very strongly that if something happened in my house, God will send some other person to take care of my house. And that's the way that I grow you people, and I trusted this, and you would have noticed that is how you grow up. That even if something happened and I was not there, someone will step in and attend to you. And that's how many of you went through. Wherever you came and you call the name Aji-Mvo, you will have somebody who will appear as a father to you and take my place. So that is why, as I said, this is the kind of influence that the Christianity has borne on me. But it may be negative from the human point of view. But in fact, it is a matter of faith for me.
Because you believed in that, and we are who we are. We survived, and we're here. So you've used the term. You've described yourself as Clansboy, not Clansman, Clansboy. So some people are raising their eyebrows, like, why is he calling himself Clansman, Clansboy? So explain to people who Clansboy is, because we've thrown that term around.
I use that term as a nickname to name myself as a writer, and being a student of anthropology and culture. I discovered that every one of us belongs to a clan. And a clan, there are 2 words that I battle with and upset the dictionary. One is the tribe. I didn't quite like the word tribe, even when I read anthropological books and I write essays. The word tribe describes a community of people descended from one ancestor and having a big person there as a king. And so the tribe is described in relation to the person, the one ancestor. Now a clan is a collection of people who come together and agree to stay together, even if they don't come down from the same ancestor. And so a boy in that sense is taking my youth,
Mm-hmm.
because I've spent many years working as youth, and I myself, I enjoyed my youth. So I still describe myself up to this time as Clansboy, because it's a boy who is grown up in a clan, studying that clan, and participating in that clan, and contributing to that clan. And so, as Clansboy, it reminds me of my ethnia. That is that I come from Agam.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of my denomination, that I come from a particular church denomination. It reminds me of my gender, that I am male. It reminds me of my echelon, that I am not a very high person, because I'm not a rich person, I'm not a wealthy person, but I am a worthy person, whether as a boy or as a man. And it reminds me of my status, and the status that I am a child of God, and I will remain a child of God no matter how old I am in years.
Share, please share, guys. Share. I've shared on several platforms here, but guys, join, like, subscribe. Don't just like the video, subscribe. Let's blow YouTube up today with Clansboy here. Subscribe, share the link if you can, so that we have more viewers viewing this, because this information should not stay with one person. We need to share it, right? So Clansboy here, he has explained where that comes from. So this explains a lot. You see where I get that spirit of community. He believes in Reverend Aji-Mvo here believes in community. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with a community. And truly, that's what has guided your life. It has guided, most of us, your children, to live in that way. And like you said, we've survived just by calling your name somewhere, and even the prayers have protected us from a lot of things, and a lot of people are protected by your prayers. The question I have for you, you've done a lot of research, you do a lot of reading, you're very knowledgeable. How have you been able over the last 50 years to stay focused, to shut noise out, to shut distractions out, and you've stayed the course? You've not changed. You've been the same person from day one. Nothing has changed you, whether it's time, whether it's social media, whether it's the people around you. You've been around a lot of different personalities, but you've stayed the same person. Explain to us how you can do that and survive.
Yes, I do that because I am a lover and I am loved. And when I came up with the saying, it is sensible to be sensitive to the sentiments of the sentimental, it was a summary of my philosophy of life. It is sensitive. I mean, it is sensible. That means you must be wise, you must be knowledgeable, you must be aware. And to be sensitive means being responsive, being able to react, being able to encourage. And then to be sensitive to the sentiments, sentiment being love, sentiment being harmony, sentiment being living in peace, living in justice. And then the sentimental are the people who are like you, who are lovers as you. So if somebody loves you, love them back. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe that, I created another saying, two other things. We live because we love. This means that because we love, we will protect each other. And we will not take a knife against another. We will not take a gun against another. We will not kill somebody because we love. So we live because we love. Where there is love, life is blooming. Life is sure. Life is guarded.
Yeah.
And then the other one is we love because we live. Now, the first one is we live because we love. That is peace. Where you love, there is peace, harmony. But we love because we live. This is a matter of justice. The fact that you are alive, you are compelled to love. Because as God gave the commandments to Moses and Jesus summarized the commandments into love God, love neighbor. So in this way, God charges us to be just, to be fair to others, not to look down on anybody, to regard everyone else as an equal. And so for me, these two things, the first one I quoted and these two last two, I build up my philosophy of life and make me to react to people, to regard people as God's image.
Yeah.
So the God in me lives in my neighbor. I see you, I'm seeing God. Now, the other thing which also guides me is that even though the whole world seems to have gone wrong with chaos, with violence, with hatred, with wickedness, with so-called, I mean, I don't use racism because, I mean, there's nothing like race for me. I mean, people misuse colors to create an ideology, but it is more, some discrimination. And so if these things are there, if you focus, you open your eyes and you're seeing only these things, you will think that the whole world is damned. But I believe that God created the world. In the days of Noah, more people were wicked, selfish, and unloving. That's why God destroyed the world. But since Noah and God promised not to destroy the world again, the world has had more good people than bad people. So evil is actually smaller than good. And so we should rather celebrate the good and ignore the bad. And if we think in this way, we will be promoting that which enhances life. We'll be promoting that which enhances life than speaking a language that promotes evil. That's the way I look at things.
And it's true because this man sitting here, when you look at anything, you've always seen the positive side of it. Before he even gets to the negative, it has to really go deep, and there have to be a lot of layers that you pass through to get to where you see anything bad in something. And that's one thing I do admire about you. Speak to the young pastors, those who are coming up now, who, they haven't been around for 50 years. Speak to them. Just, have a word for those young pastors. What should they be thinking about as they go into their career, as they're leading their sheep, they're the shepherd to their sheep. Speak to those people who are coming up.
Yes, thank you for reminding me about this. Even though I am here, I'm still living with the seminary I passed through. And having been a visiting lecturer at the seminary and watched young people go through their studies and knowing their social psychology, the way people function in group, I can tell you that one of the things that can destroy a pastor is when the pastor takes the pastoral ministry as employment. If you take the pastoral ministry as a job, then you've started off the wrong way. For me, the pastoral ministry is a vocation. And I hold strongly to this. Because I give an example. When I went to the seminary, I was working with the government, with the public works department as a technician. I was on 30,000 francs a month. And if I did overtime, I'll have more money. But when I went to the seminary, after 4 years of training, that they usually, when you graduate, they place you on a scale and to begin with. I was placed on 15,000. So imagine 30,000, 4 years after, you're brought down to 15,000.
Wow.
And I survived.
Yeah.
I survived. Because for me, I wasn't looking at the money that pays me. I wasn't working to be paid. I was paid because I work. And this is the way I think. So if I think this way, that whatever the congregation gives me, because like in the church, even in Cameroon, you remember that civil servants are categorized, but pastors were never categorized. So government could not dictate how much the church should pay the pastor. So or the church, that depending on their sources of income, they will decide on how much to pay the pastor. And so with this in mind, I regard it and have the attitude that I am paid because I work. Because the Bible says that the shepherd will be taken care of, the one who tends the sheep will be taken care of. So the church is charged to take care of their shepherds. That's the way the church functions. But if you take the pastoral ministry as a job, then you expect to compete with civil servants. You expect that you will be paid high. And once you make that expectation, it will affect your work. And you will want to work, to do work according to the measure of your pay.
Yes.
But I can tell you that even the time that I did, I ran 4 departments. If there were 4 people running those departments, each of them would be on an allowance.
Yes.
But I was on 1 allowance because the church finance order states that you can only be 1 allowance at a time. I was on 1 allowance, but doing 4 people's jobs. When I left, 4 people replaced me at one time in the church. So if a young pastor comes in, my advice is that even if you enjoy the ministry, I know that you cannot work without pay, but do not take it as a profession and come in as something that you have a calling. You have a zeal to spread the word of God. You want to share the word of God. You want to take care of people. You want to be to work with people. I mean, for me, I love PWD because I said, instead of working with stones, working on the scaffold, building the houses, I should rather build minds. I should build huts. That's why I went into training myself and preparing myself for human development. So my tech is the theology and human development. So in this way, I mean, if I look at this, then the pastor is a friend to the congregants. The pastor is a father to the fatherless. The pastor is a colleague, a counselor. I mean, there are many different things. And these things have their own reward. They may not be material, but even when you enter, you go to pray for an elderly woman. You are not compelled to take anything from that woman. But the woman will not allow you to go home without something. Even if you refuse to take money, they will at least give you a bowl of granules. And I've seen this, that even like you have seen at home. Even when I was not there, people came in, dropped the plantain, dropped cocoyams, dropped potatoes, and then and left and said, "This is for the pastor." And with that, even if you were to buy, So those things made me to feel, yes, that I'm working with people who know my value and then who appreciate my work. So for young pastors, I would say they should not first go for money. Go for the heart. Go for the message that you have and you want to give out. And in fact, a true evangelist. I mean, I usually say to my colleagues, it is easier to be an evangelist than to be a pastor. Now, why? Because the pastor has to take care of the congregation, organize worship, make sure there's a church building to gather, make sure that the things are working, the committee is working. But the evangelist is one who has the word of God, the Bible, and just shares the word. And he can share the word here. She can go there, pass this way, go this way, share the word. She doesn't have any problem with organizing the audience. She just needs an audience to speak. So if you see this as something that is your gift, that you have the gift of preaching, then you can function in that way. And then if your calling is also to go into pastoral ministry, to follow up your preaching, then you go into that and you do that. Secondly, pastors should not compete with the civil society. For example, I mean, I know there was an era when we had to introduce motorcycles in the church, in our church, so that pastors could have means of transport, because it was a shame for pastors to be traveling and people are riding cars, riding motorcycles, and the pastor will sometimes be in a bicycle or walking. So we said, okay, let's improve on that. And we're going gradually. And so in this way, I mean, some pastors saw this as something that they had to fight for. And so if something was given to an older pastor or a senior pastor, the younger pastor would say, but why is that one given this and I'm not given? So that, again, don't strive for that which is not yet your own. That's, again, a principle of initiation, that you need to be initiated from one level to another. Don't try to jump the queue. Then also for pastors, they have the temptation of money. I mean, as I said, when the congregation gathering money, you want to put your eye on that. You don't have your eye on it as if it is your money, because any money that is of the congregation is God's money.
It's God's money.
And if you put your hand there, if you eat God's money, it will not go through your throat. Even if it goes through, you will not be able to pass it out. Even if you pass it out, you will pass it out with blood. So you have to be careful that you don't pick up punishment because of egotism or something that you are going after. So for young pastors, my key point is enter the pastoral ministry as a vocation, a calling, and through that the congregation will grow you give you the respect that you deserve as a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be able to do your work enjoying. And for married pastors, they should also resist the temptation of their wives who want to compete, because sometimes it is the wives who push the husband to do things that they cannot, they are not able to do. And so if they bring up, that's why in the seminary, when we're lecturing, our wives to also attend the lectures, so they could be prepared to be alongside the minister. And then they were prepared in that way. That's why you can see my wife, we are all growing together gradually, and we do things at our level.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what I can tell the young people. I mean, when, as I was saying, I whenever there's a graduation in the seminary, even though I'm here, I always write an article advising the young pastors. And I even wrote an article, a letter written, as a young pastor arriving at a new congregation, and then the elders reading, speaking to that pastor and telling the pastor what they expect. And then the pastor, of course, has to pick up from where the people first want to him, not come with a ready-made agenda. Even if you have your tools as your liturgy and your counseling book, your constitution, you first have to hear from the congregation what their desires are and what picture they have of a pastor, and then gradually you bring them to the level where you want them to be.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm sure the young pastors are listening, and I thought that was very important, because not everybody can brag about staying in a profession for 50 years. Very few of us have done a job for that long. The longest I've done is 10 years in one profession, and now 10 in another. So it shows resilience, it shows consistency, and like I said, you haven't changed much. I mean, we can go, I think we'll have a part 2 of this session, because I don't think we can ask this man all these questions in one session. We'll have to round it up very soon here. But I forgot to do a shout out at the beginning. So that signature tune that we started off was his last child, my brother. He came up with that. So we have to give a shout out to MC Zogo for that song. He came up with the beats, and Seth, who has been on the session before, my last born, was in it too. He did the vocals. So yeah, go check out MC Zogo on YouTube. He's on all the social media platforms. MC and then ZOGHO. You can look him up. He has some music out there. Yeah, he's in Toronto. So shout out to you. A couple of last questions here before we round up. So we're doing the celebration, 50 years. What is in store for the next 10 to 20 years for Reverend Dr. Joseph Aji-Mvo? What can we expect from you? Because we know, yes, you're still actively preaching right now, but I don't think you'll go on forever, right? But at some point, no pressure. Some point you wrap things up, but what is the plan?
No, sure. I mean, I will wrap things up. I mean, as I serve the congregation now, I will serve the congregation at least for some time. And as I said, my spirit, in particular now that I'm serving PCC Dallas and PCC Atlanta North, my spirit is, as soon as they are able to have a pastor who is ready to take over from me, I will step aside. And I don't say enjoy my retirement, because I've never been retired.
No,
I mean, I don't believe in retirement. I mean, as a pastor, because as a preacher, I'm a preacher until I go.
Yes.
But what will keep me for the next, even if I have to live for another 20 years, will be the spirit of Simeon and the priest Simeon and prophet Anna. You remember Anna in the Bible? When the child Jesus was brought to the temple, Simeon was the one who received the child, blessed the child, and said, "We have been waiting for the Messiah." And Anna said the same. Anna had been in the temple, and the Bible says she had never left the temple, and she had been praying for the temple until that day when they brought Jesus in. So my role would be to continue to pray for the church, to continue to pray for the families, to continue to pray for the community, to continue to pray for the world. And my prayer is backed up with teaching. I mean, I'm a teacher by training. I mean, some people think I'm just a preacher, but I'm a trained teacher. And so I'll continue to preach. I'll continue to teach. And then also, I am a social worker, also a trained social worker. So I'll continue to serve. So if you want to ask me for the next 20 years, try to work out a word Acts. I mean, maybe the word apostle with some, it's a title of some pastors, that's okay. But for me, it is an appointee, appointed by God to preach and teach and serve. That will be my curriculum for the rest of the time I'll be
You're
living.
still here. If there's somebody who has written his own autobiography, it's this man. If he closes his eyes right now, this minute, we don't have to dig around. We don't have to look for anything. His autobiography is written. So you believe in that. You believe in people living, and that was part of the title. It was, the 50 years of reverence and reference, writing your own autobiography. Just summarize why it's important to live your life that way, because I know you've told me, even when I'm stressed and trying to do everything at once, you've told me to live this moment like it's my last, or so speak to people about writing your own autobiography.
Well, my writing did actually, it is not necessary. It is not because I want people necessarily to read about me, because I live every day. What I do it with the people. To give an example, when I serve in a parish, I do not, and I'm going away, I do not wait for the parish to organize a send-off for me. I organize the farewell Sunday for myself and preach my last sermon and move. Because I do not want the people to say, they say all the nice things that they have about me only on that day. I want them that as long as I walk along with you, each time I do something, point it out to me and let us correct it and as we go along. So I live one day at a time. And I think if we show life in that way, then it will be much easier. We will not have anxiety. We will not have depression. We will not have qualms when other people hurt us or when other people jump on us or step on our toes. Now, they're saying that is my writing is part of the idea of keeping a diary. If I could, I mean, I learned typing myself. I learned myself to type on the computer, and I've
in your 60s.
Yes, I mean, I have studied that myself. Now I'm working on the computer, and I can't keep away from my computer because there are a lot of files there. If I disappear today, you will find difficulties in accessing the things, but eventually you will discover that there's a lot of material there that could have been edited and then put out in books. But I am also one who who functioned as I go along, and functioning meaning that whatever I wrote it for immediate consumption. I didn't write things in order just to publish a book, because if you look at the Sunday school scheme, I worked out the Sunday school scheme for 5 years. They are still using it till today. You look at the YP handbook. I developed the YP handbook from earlier ones. So I read what other people had done and improved on it. You look at the CWF, study material, study books, which they publish now. I helped to structure the present format that they are using. I mean, if you look at in religious education, chaplaincy work, I worked out the RIPS readers, religious education among Presbyterian students. I worked that out, I mean, to help students, because I knew that I was the only chaplain and there were no other adults. So I trained student elders so that if I were not in class, they would just read this material to the people. Right here, when I came here as I was coordinator of the PCC USA Presbytery, I developed what I call divine dramaturgy. That is making the liturgy, writing it out in full. Because the way it is run at home, you have to be trained to be able to use 2-3 books at the same time. But I have brought all together into one. I made it a dialogue, so that if I tell you, you do this, somebody just comes in and they do it. And that is to train the lay people to be able to run the church. I mean, and to participate in the leadership of the church with the pastor. And so that is something I have developed. So all these things, all the departments where I've worked, I have tried to establish a system. I've tried to establish a system that can be used, because I'm a structural thinker. And if you have a structure, anybody can fit into it. But if you're only functioning, only doing the job if you're appointed for that particular moment, when you go, the job goes with the person.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't believe that I am indispensable.
Yeah.
So you have to build a structure so that anybody who comes can fit into that structure.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that I'm influenced by my training as a builder. I mean, I don't know. So in this way, this is what I mean when you ask about living one day at a time. Now, the other thing is what I still have something I need to publish. Maybe you and your broadcaster will develop it into a drama. I had a dream which I wrote which I developed into a drama. I dreamed that I died.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my friend came to bury me, dug the grave. And then when he wanted to bury me, I told him, no, you cannot bury me. Let me first go and greet my master's wife. And that the master, Mr. Njinda, who used to be my master, the headmaster with whom I was living. And then the wife, the late wife, the both of them are late now. But I said, let me go and greet her. Then they said, but come quickly, I want to bury you so I can go home. I said, but if this is your task to bury me, you cannot go home without burying me. So why are you hurrying? So I had that kind of conversation in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So later on, I developed that into a drama. And now, if I were to write to write anything concerning my death, I would say, the day I died to live. The day I died to live. Now that means that I pour the experiences of how people have killed me and I'm still living.
Mm-hmm.
Then I also pour the experience that when I eventually die, I will go to heaven and live. And that should be the goal of every believer in God.
Wow. I mean, you can't water that down. I can't squeeze 50 years into this session, so we will have to wrap it up here. I'll leave it on that note. I was going to ask him for final thoughts, but I think that will be a final thought.
Well, the final
yes.
thought, let me leave this with you before you round up.
Yes.
Thorough thinkers think through thoughts thoroughly.
Guys, he has acronyms. He has, name it. He has sayings out there that he came up with. So many. We'll have to have him back on the show, but this was really beautiful, rich. I cannot express enough how blessed I feel to be able to sit here and have this conversation with my dad, and friend to many, father to many, the husband to my mom, brother, name it. He's, the Clansboy. So I want to thank every single one of you who watched today and who will watch this video later. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're sharing the video, and just celebrate him from wherever you are. He said the same thing. If he closes his eyes today, he will want to be celebrated from wherever you are. Do not try to change positions. But I want to thank you guys. Thank you for watching. And until next segment, stay blessed, stay empowered, uplift yourself, and we're working towards success, growth, and fulfillment. Thank you.
The Saaghe Fogwe podcast. Elevate your life, empowering insights for growth, success,